Vlad the Impaler, or Vlad Dracula, is remembered today as the leader of what is considered modern-day Romania. He was a man who had an immensely brutal and barbaric side, and he would execute scores of people, and his enemies were never ever spared. He was a man whose favoured execution method is linked to his name, and he was the inspiration behind Count Dracula. However, throughout his time ruling over Wallachia, he would execute thousands and also torture thousands. But today he is considered a national hero to Romanians, as he was known for his fierce resistance to the Ottoman Turks. But what is the story of his executions? Join us today as we look at this, and to support our channel, please make sure to subscribe. During his lifetime, there were stories that came out about the brutality of Vlad. The Pope even read stories on him, and poems were written documenting his evil deeds and his brutality. In one of these stories, Vlad had two monks impaled to aid them to go to heaven, and he also ordered the impalement of their animals following the death of their masters. Many considered him a man who was not afraid of executing monks and of those who had different religious beliefs too, and another rumour was that whilst his two monks were in prison, Vlad caught rats and cut them up into small pieces, alluding to the fact he was a crazed maniac. He was said to have been a man of unheard cruelty and justice, and during one incident it was said that Turkish messengers came to Vlad to pay respect, but refused to take off their turbans, according to their ancient custom, whereupon he strengthened their custom by nailing their turbans to their heads with 3 spikes, so they could not take them off. Further stories emerged about Vlad in Germany, and there were accounts of him plundering in Transylvania, and eyewitnesses had seen this happen. They said Vlad was a demented psychopath, a sadist, a gruesome murderer, and someone more brutal than Caligula and Nero. One of these German accounts stated that Vlad had a big copper cauldron built, and put a lid made of wood with holes in the top of it. He put the people in the cauldron and put their heads in the holes and fastened them there. Then he filled it with water and set a fire under it, and let the people cry their eyes out until they were boiled to death. And then he invented frightening, terrible, unheard of tortures. He ordered that women be impaled together with their suckling babies on the same stake. But he was a man who was a warmonger, and he learned about governing a country using fear and terror. As a teenager, the Ottoman Sultan, Murad II, had imprisoned Vlad, and then Vlad fought battles against the Ottomans in his 20s. But during these battles in the 1450s, he developed a reputation for his evil, and his strength and influence would grow. In April 1459, he attacked the city of Brasov in Transylvania, and he would lead his men through the city, burning down buildings and pillaging, and he ordered dozens of men, women and children out to a hill near to the chapel of St. Jacob. Whilst here, they had these civilians impaled on spikes on the hill, and whilst this happened, Vlad allegedly sat there on a table for his lunch, whilst the victims were next to him moaning and writhing in pain. He, it's believed, dipped his bread in the blood of his victims during this meal. But Vlad would also be known for being a destroyer, and when he captured land and territory, he would often rampage burning villages and towns, with civilians being burned alive in their homes. But during a banquet in the great hall of his capital, Targovista, he would invite many local people to the hall for dinner. Many of these people were known as being beggars and poor, and many were elderly. However, he gave the guests a feast, which they were amazed at, and they were incredibly surprised by his hospitality. But then Vlad locked the people in the hall, and he ordered his guards to torch the building. They all perished inside of the hall. It seemed that killing for Vlad was a sport, and something he found entertainment from. One of the most famous and brutal acts carried out by Vlad the Impaler was the Forest of the Impaled. In 1462, Ottoman Sultan Mehmed II took his army to fight Vlad's, and the men were greeted by a horrific sight. It was referred to as the Field of the Stakes, and it was a huge mass execution of impaled Ottoman men, women and children. No one was spared, and the birds were picking at the civilians, and there were 20,000 people dead or dying victims of Vlad the Impaler, with a 3-mile by 1-mile long stretch of woodland containing the bodies as well. The Ottoman Sultan was shocked and his men fled in fear, but one of the executed was Hamza Pasha, a prominent Ottoman soldier who was on a stake much taller than the others, and he had his arms and legs cut off as well. Some who upset the ruler were impaled upside down, which was brutal, and he would often flay the feet of the prisoners who he captured, and the wounds then had salt rubbed into them. But the executions and the purges that Vlad the Impaler was known for had gone on for years before. He would attack the boyars, the aristocratic ruling class in parts of Eastern Europe, including his land of Wallachia. When Vlad became prince, he saw the boyars as a problem that needed dealing with, and he would invite many prominent ones to his castle for a meeting. In this 500 people were gathered in the Great Hall, and Vlad then spoke to them. But then he ordered them to be seized, and many who had brought their families to the castle were then impaled alive in one huge mass execution in the courtyard of his palace. It was a huge display of power, and the rotting bodies of the boyars were left as a strong message for some time. As mentioned, he would also use a large copper cauldron in his castle to execute people. This, as mentioned, had a wooden cover over it, and the centre of the wooden lid was big enough for the head of a man to fit through. Then the pot was placed on a fire, and water was put inside of it. One by one a prisoner would then be brought out, and he was held upside down, and his head was then placed through the wooden lid and the hole, and into the boiling water head first. He killed lots in this way, and in one incident he had 300 people boiled and roasted alive in groups, and he would then force the other victims to eat the meat of their fellow victims until nothing was left before they too would be roasted alive. Many at the time believed that Vlad punished people harshly to prevent any further crimes and actions, but some of his actions were completely barbaric. Today he would have been considered a harrowing war criminal who carried out huge acts of genocide, but in Romania he is still today considered by some a national hero. Many state he was a tyrant who punished criminals and executed those who were not patriotic or loyal to him, and some said in his fight against the boyars he was a hero. Some have claimed that he was one of the greatest Romanian rulers that have lived, and that he fought for the independence of the Romanian lands, and his acts have been seen by some and been rationalised as necessary in the interests of the population. He was a ruler, though, who would be killed in battle, and the circumstances of his death are debated. Some claim he was assassinated, but others say he was mistook for a Turkish soldier. His head was allegedly sent to Mehmed II, and his body was cut into many pieces. It was a brutal end for one of history's most notorious rulers. Thanks for watching. To support our channel, please make sure to subscribe, and once again, thank you so much for watching.